Well, here I am training with a pair of kama, that is, sickles, in kind of the Japanese Okinawan tradition. And what does that have to do with this? No, it doesn't have to do with the jawbone tomahawk, which I've talked about previously on the channel. I'll explain the connection and put forth, for the first time, I'm pretty sure ever, a weapons history hypothesis. But first, let me say this video is dedicated to and made in thanks to Ashley Sharp, a Kickstarter backer who was instrumental in helping me make this book here, Deadly Ingenuity. My proof copy is getting printed as we speak. Been about 5 years since my last weapons book, which was this one here. And she helped me with that one as well. But let's get to our subject. You saw me with a pair of kama, a pair of sickles, at the start of the video. Here's my antique kusarigama. But back to the simple sickle. As I've pointed out on the channel before, people have fought with farming implements for as long as there has been farming. And they have fought with other kinds of tools for as long as those have been around as well. So east or west, the origin story here is pretty simple. People used this kind of thing throughout the world, and since time immemorial. For this purpose right here, I don't even think I need to explain it, right? Not even the basics. And this instrument, a sickle, has a sharp metal blade. Less than shocking then that these got used as weapons, as ad hoc weapons, but also got weaponized. And by the way, that's again, east, west, single hand version, double hand version. We've talked about this kind of thing with the rake, the mallet or maul, all kinds of things. From the farm, from the tool shed. As you might guess, my favorite example of this weapon type and evolution is the flail, which we're going to see the peasant in the upper left wielding. And then here, in another visual depiction of a medieval peasant revolt, you see a flail, you see a pitchfork, and yes, the sickle would have been in this kind of arsenal. And we talked about weaponization, so it did get weaponized, nowhere near as much as some other instruments, but here's, a warrior's sickle. This one right here was not forged for felling wheat. The thing is, the Western world's kind of question mark sickle like this, it's just not as weapon-friendly as the Eastern version with the perpendicular blade. That one's more stab-friendly with kind of an axe swinging motion. And that's how we got what are called war scythes, like these. So you can see the shape is, pretty drastically changed, although it keeps some of the original inspiration. And here are some users, and here are some more. Therefore, when this kind of a thing got weaponized, it really had to get altered pretty significantly. However, the Western martial arts tradition does include using the actual sickle, the sickle scythe, but the question mark shape, the unaltered one, as we can see here. Let's stop for a quick martial arts geek out, and let me point out, see the guy on the left? It seems to me he might be drawing his blade across the opponent's arm. This is obviously like a practice training type image, but in terms of the fighting technique being exhibited, that could be what he's doing. And I say that only because I've been trained with the Okinawan kama, and that training has included that technique. So just think about that for a second. Yikes. Yeah, you don't have to cut in kind of in a perpendicular manner always. You could draw the blade across their skin and basically flay the limb. And as you'll see, not in this image here, but in the next two, this Western martial arts tradition does include the two-handed version of the implement as well. And now this martial art, or the techniques applied to scythes, sickles, nowhere near as well preserved as over in the Far East, where there's this, constant fascination with preserving every weapon art there is. The Far East also includes the legend that ninja were particularly fond of the kama. I don't believe that myself. But it's the Okinawan and then Japanese influence that causes things like this modern tactical, quote-unquote tactical scythes, kama, to exist. And by the way, for even more nerding out, the word sickle generally means the question mark like blade, and scythe, the kind we're looking at here. But scythe in the West also implies a two-handed instrument, so a kama is kind of a one-handed scythe in a way. But with all of this background behind us, notice the scythe here being wielded by a peasant. The previously teased hypothesis is that fighting with a scythe, sickle, whatever you want to call it, goes back much, much further than assumed. Because we naturally think of this kind of instrument being the one that was first turned into an ad hoc weapon, when in fact, in my estimation, it was something much more like this. And this. Because it turns out stone-bladed sickles were used long before metal ones became common. And I think this is probably a huge surprise to the average weapon geek. And if you're looking at these saying, well, how in the world were these used as sickles? Well, they were used in sickles like this. And if tens of thousands of years ago you were using this kind of a thing to cut down some crops, what are you going to do if you're attacked or want to attack someone? Well, same thing this guy would do many thousands of years later, or like the peasants we saw from those rebellion images. And look how similar the metal object in his hand is to this one. Now let's read about an archaeological find related to these. Agriculture is believed to have dawned around 12,000 years ago in the Levant or southern Turkey. Now remains of a 23,000-year-old camp, including flint sickle blades found on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, throws back the start of cereal cultivation by thousands of years. The prehistoric camp was discovered by archaeologists when the water level in the Sea of Galilee fell to a low point in modern times. And that was from an Israeli newspaper, or newspaper site. Let's read from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Ancient Egyptians used sickles made from flint and wood to reap grain. Pieces of flint were shaped to fit into a wooden haft along with a number of other such inserts, and secured with an adhesive. These constitute some of the earliest evidence for farming in Egypt. They were made mainly during the 5th to 4th millennia BC, after which they were replaced by, and then it talks about different kinds of inserts for the blades, all that good stuff. We get the point, which is that things like this, or like these, were used in different parts of the world and a very long time ago. Speaking of parts of the world, remember early in the video we showed these. So this was the Native American version, and the teeth cut through the plant fiber in this case. And by the way, the kinds of things we're talking about today were used to just cut down grass as well, like for thatched roofs. It wasn't just food. And the folks at toolsfromtheearth.com show us how this would have been attached to a handle. And that site talks about how deer jaw sickles have been found in Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and, quote, bound with rawhide and hide glue for a tight, long-lasting tool that will stand hours of cutting, end quote. And while this picture is scrolling up, let me read to you about another kind that I don't have a picture of. This is regarding a tool of the natives on the Kamchatka Peninsula. They mow grass with a scythe made of the shoulder blade of a whale, which they wet so well by grinding it on a stone that they bring it to a very good edge. So whether all bone, bone with teeth, wood with flint, there was plenty of opportunity, and that's putting it mildly, for this kind of thing to get used in defense or offense. And it's interesting, or at least I think it is, because sickles, scythes, commas, they're uniquely shaped. There's not a lot of fighting implements that have those properties. It cuts the opponent as you pull it back towards yourself. And at least for the most part, East and West, they were weapons of necessity, improvised weapons. But that history, kind of the point of the video here, goes back way, way further than people, I think, generally assume. And I think it's very safe to assume they had a different physical construction than most people think. And that is the video. Thanks once again to Ashley Sharp. She's an archaeologist, by the way, who deals with ancient animal bones, so I thought this would be appropriate. See you guys next time.